Somebody asked me to do a simulation based around the Seahawks trading for Yannick Ngakoue. So essentially doing the trade that Tony Pauline reported and then seeing how a 7-round mock draft would follow in after that. I don't think it's very likely at all that the Seahawks are going to make that move. If they are unwilling to pay big money to Frank Clark and to Jadeveon Clowney with their physical profiles, especially given that both players had been with the team already and they knew how they fit, then I don't know why they would trade and then pay for Yannick Ngakoue. And he's going to probably want more money, actually, because he's been franchise tagged. Then the Seahawks will have actually traded for him and paid a big price for him. He would expect to be paid handsomely. He doesn't have the physical profile of either of Clowney or Clark, so I just think it's unlikely. But what you're going to find out in this simulation is it actually puts the Seahawks in quite a difficult place, because if they sign him, if they trade him for him and then sign him to a huge contract, then they would have him. Presumably, let's say they pay him $20 million a year. They would then not have anybody else on the other side. They would be able to fit Clowney and him at massive salaries onto the roster. At least I don't think so, because they've spent most of their cap space on the middle class. They've signed a bunch of busted first-round picks to try and provide greater competition and depth. They don't have the money anymore to be as aggressive as we thought they were going to be initially. So now they've got to make do with the situation that they've created for themselves. And if you sign Ngakoue, there's nobody else. So then you need a 5-technique. You've got to go on. You're not going to rely on LJ Collier and Rasheem Green to play that role. I know people are very happy to try and suggest that they think that's acceptable. It's not. They need somebody else who can play that role, preferably a veteran. But again, if they trade for Ngakoue, they're probably not going to be able to do that. And as you'll find out in the simulation in a moment, it does leave you in a bit of a bind. So here we go. Seahawks, 7-round simulation. We'll pause it. Let's do the trade first. So what Tony Pauline, the number 1 draft insider in the world, suggested was the Seahawks essentially giving Jacksonville their 2nd-round pick. They've got 2 of them, so their first 2nd-round pick, and then Seattle swapping their 1st-round pick for Jacksonville's 2nd. So this will be accepted. There you go. And it leaves the Seahawks picking for the first time at 42. They only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks, but they do have Yannick Ngakoue. I think this is the first simulation where I've seen the Lions taking Tua, but there you go. Wow. It's a long wait for that first pick. So here we go. So 2 really good running backs left on the board, a really good safety, and then some of the other guys. Aquara's gone, Ruiz is gone, Josh Uche's gone. I just don't have a feeling for Yetur Gross-Matos with the Seahawks. And saying they need a 5-technique, he actually would probably be more suited to that than Leo. But I just don't see it. I just don't see it with him. You've got Curtis Weaver, who again is more. He's playing the position that Ngakoue is going to play. So would I. Marlon Davidson's an option to play 5-technique, to play inside out. He's not Clowney, is he? But if you are looking for somebody who can play the edge and move inside, Marlon Davidson is an option there. The only thing with him is if you actually look, he was brought out a lot on running downs. you think it'd be the other way around, but for running downs at Auburn, they took him off the defensive line, which is a bit surprising. And kind of, he builds himself up as he's a big dog and he's going to get after it and stuff like that. If you're being pulled out on running downs, I just don't know. That makes me less convinced about him for the Seahawks. Zuniga's hot and cold, but has got an amazing profile. Doesn't have 33-inch arms though, just shy. Does play inside and out for Florida. Now, the other focus I'm going to have on this in this mock draft is I am really going to go for offensive line, defensive line. Tony Pauline has also reported this week there's going to be a heavy focus early and often with the words he used in the trenches. So I am going to go along with that. Yannick Ngakoue is their first pick, essentially. He is their second one. Now, Isaiah Wilson is there, and people who are regular visitors to the Seahawks Draft Blog will know how much I like him. I don't think there's any way that he's still here. I think he's a first-round pick. So I'm not taking him unless I'm taking him at 27. I'll tell you that now. In none of these simulations, I'm not going to take him unless he's there at 27. So I'm looking at these two guys. I'm not the biggest Josh Jones fan, but he didn't test as well as some of these other guys. But he did test, and we know his size, and we know he does have some potential. So in this particular projection here, I don't think Brandon Shell's contract is so big that they'll feel he's the future. That very much is a veteran draft hedge that they can get out of that deal quite quickly. So I'm going to take Josh Jones here at 42. So yeah, you're 45 picks into the draft. You've got a pass rusher, Premier Leo pass rusher in Ngakoue. You've got a tackle who could either potentially be the long-term future at left tackle or the long-term future at right tackle. What are the needs? Defensive line. Let's see what is left for us here at 64. So I think, these are the two options really, because, they can always sign a veteran defensive tackle. They kind of do that every year anyway. What they need is somebody who can play 5 technique. Now, he's more of an edge presence than he is, but I just think he's better. And if, and it's a big if, LJ Collier gave you anything or Rasheem Green gave you anything this year, you could play him full-time at defensive tackle. I think he will end up as a full-time defensive tackle, but there's more of a mystery there because he didn't do that in college. And I just like him more. Now, the other problem with this, Jonathan Taylor's not going to go at 72, by the way. The other problem with this is we don't have, in some of these other scenarios, we've traded down rather than trading for Ngakoue, and we do not have that third-round pick to go after a running back. So we're not going to be able to get Cam Akers this time. We're not going to get Robert Hunt this time because he's gone at 92 to Baltimore, but I do think he is a player that the Seahawks will really, really like. So here we are. Cal Duggar's still on the board. He's probably the one you'd expect. He's ranked at 46 and he's here at 101. Nothing really here. I'm a huge fan of Rashard Lawrence. Would seriously consider him here to get a defensive tackle. I love Anthony McFarland. Don't think he's a fit for the Seahawks. I'm going to try and wait for this guy, Zach Moss. See, Van Jefferson didn't test, and I think that's a problem. You need to know how fast he is. Chase Claypool did, and should be an option here, but I just feel like they've got the big receiver type now, and they're going to get another one. It's kind of that quicker player. They've signed Philip Dorsett as a hedge. I think that's the kind that they're going to want. So I just like the way Rashard Lawrence plays. He's got the plus 33-inch arms. Not amazing testing, which could put them off, but if they want grit, and they constantly talk about grit and competitive nature and stuff like that, that is Rashard Lawrence. He's not going to let anybody down. He's going to bring it every single week. Okay, we're back on the clock. He's the guy that we've been taking in this range previously. I just think it makes sense, Bryce Hall. If he's there in round 4, I'm going to tell you now, I'll probably take him in most simulations, because the idea of getting a guy with his profile to redshirt and develop, especially with Dunbar and Griffin out of contracts after the 2020 season, I think it just makes sense to, if he's there, go and get him. Okay. So the player that we were hoping would still be here is... See, I think Zach Moss is an interesting one, because he's obviously very physical, and they love physical running backs to run through people and do all of that. I just don't think he's quite... I don't know, there's just something that makes me feel like he might be average for the next level. But you take him in round 4, at the very end of round 4 as well, in that Robert Turbin style range, and he was limited too. He had some physical skills, but he was limited. So, getting Zach Moss to add into your rotation of running backs, a bit of security there. You've not got one of the ones early. That's good value. So one more pick to go. And then we'll review what we've done. Yeah, there are some things that happen in these simulations, by the way. That the Colts trade up to number 5 from whatever. They gave up practically all of their picks this year and next to do that. It's obviously very unrealistic, but really it's about just sort of, that doesn't really matter what the Colts do in this simulation. It's just about who's left for the Seahawks. That's kind of the scenarios that we're looking for here. So last pick, we have not taken a receiver at all. I like Lawrence Cager. Would they like Lawrence Cager? That's a question mark. I think they've taken enough tight ends already. See, he's still there. They've only taken one offensive lineman. People are going to get sick of these Louisiana guys by the end. People have been asking, why do you like him so much? The way that they play is very, very suited to the Seahawks. They've got the size, length, power, production in the running game. I would not be surprised at all if the Seahawks draft one of them, and I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted both. I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted them earlier than people are projecting them to go either. And even though they've signed all these guys, Chance Warmack and BJ Finney and Cedric Abui and Brendan Shell, does anybody actually look at these guys and go, "Whoa, they're going to make the team. They're better"? Or that, obviously Shell's going to make the team, Finney's going to make the team, but are you looking at them and thinking Seahawks are definitely better for them being here? I mean, that's the question mark with what they've done. Right, so here we go. Here's the draft class. Now, I think this is probably about as good as you can hope for if you trade for Ngakoue. So you've got your Josh Jones here, who is in year 1 competition for the right tackle spot, maybe guard, and potentially one day could be a left tackle of the future. So that's your thought process there with him. I'm not the biggest fan of his. I think there are better offensive tackles in this draft. There were better offensive tackles for me available at 42, but I'm not taking Isaiah Wilson because I don't think he'll be there. So he was the first pick. So you've got Ngakoue, Josh Jones, 2 solid additions there positionally at least. Raekwon Davis, you are drafting to be your 5 technique. Now, he's not Jadeveon Clowney. He's not going to come screaming off the edge. He's not going to be an edge rusher. he is an early down defensive end who kicks inside. That's what he is. That's what you would be looking for from him at 64. And then you would be hoping that if you wanted a more pass rushing option at 5 technique, that LJ Collier a year on would do something and Rasheem Green would do something, but who has any real confidence there? And then Rashard Lawrence is your kind of your early down defensive tackle, brings some great leadership skills, some great determination, competition, rotation, depth, quality as well. He's a good player. But your line essentially would be Raekwon, 5 technique, Jaron Reed and Rashard Lawrence in the middle, Yannick Ngakoue as your Leo pass rusher. It's a line. Look, whether that's going to create sacks or not, I don't know. There'd be a lot of pressure on Ngakoue there because Raekwon Davis is not going to be a Michael Bennett sack production guy at 5 technique, and Rashard Lawrence is not a pass rusher. Neither is Jaron Reed. I know he had that great year a couple of years ago. And then it's all on Ngakoue. He is your Chris Clemens. Everything's on you, pal. You've got to go and get after it. And I just don't think that's not where they needed to be this year. This needed to be, you've got bookend defensive ends who you believe can go and get to the quarterback. But the one thing is that you're going to get a lot of attitude from him, from Jaron Reed, of course, from Ngakoue. They're all alpha males, and he can be an alpha male. He just needs to get his head straight. So at least there's some potential there. Bryce Hall's your redshirt cornerback. Love that. If he's there, I just love that fit. And I think you take a chance there. And if the injury is more serious than we all know, because obviously you can't go and test people, I think it's worth a 4th round flyer because the upside of him working out is massive. And they could do with stealing somebody in this kind of range this year. Zach Moss, physical runner, adds to the pack. They love Utah, so. And then Kevin Dotson, competition at guard. Bit more competition there. Could easily see him knocking Chance Warmack off a roster because he is a good player and he'd be good value there. So it's not a bad draft if you throw Ngakoue in there as well. I'm just not sure it's a draft or an off-season that pushes you over the edge. And that's where I think everybody was ready to be. After 2 years of resetting, this needed to be the year where you take a giant step forward. And I'm not sure, looking at what they've done and with this draft class, that they've took a big step forward. Now, if you have that and Ngakoue and Clowney, totally different story. But they can't afford Ngakoue and Clowney because they've spent a lot of money on other things. So there you go. I mean, this is the dilemma that they're faced with now. They've got to try and find a solution on the pass rush from somewhere. And what is probably more likely than an Ngakoue trade in a scenario like this, as we sit here today at the end of March with no defensive end sign apart from Bruce Irvin, who's going to be 33 this year, the solution, I guess, is to sign Clowney, hopefully, eventually, and then to go into the draft with your 27, your 59 and 64, and whether you move down from 27 or move up from 59 or whatever you do, try and get a couple of guys there. But then you're relying on rookies to help you take the next step. And you do need a bit of proven quality there. That's what the defense needs. It's what it needed. It needed some proven talent to come in. And Quinton Dunbar on his own is not really enough there. So there's the Yannick Ngakoue simulation and a few thoughts on the Seahawks. If you have a scenario that you want us to go through, let me know. I've done another one of these which focuses on the lines, which I will put out soon. I don't want to bore people with these, just do one every day. But if you have a sort of an idea like the Ngakoue sim, let me know and I'm happy to go through it. We've got some interesting things coming up this week on the blog. I'll keep that as a surprise for now, but I think you're going to like it. And I'll do another mock draft soon, which will present some scenarios that are not being talked about in the media. And that'll probably be a 2 or 3 round mock draft that I will do this week. And keep your comments coming. Give me your thoughts on this simulation. What would you have done differently? Check out Seahawks Draft Blog. Great community there. If you're not in the comment section, get involved. It's a good group. and we'll speak again soon.